talk a little bit about helicopter maintenance. I chose a flybar 90, so that gives us an idea of the possible amount of mechanics that there could be. Obviously on a flybarless model, there's a lot less linkages and things to go over, but we'll still just touch on the flybar model. A couple of the main points with maintenance is, number one, always check your bearings. Bearings are the most important, because if the bearings aren't running smooth, all that vibration could get to the gyro. It could cause other things. Lots of different problems could happen if your bearings are bad. The next thing to think about is shafts. Everybody puts them in and out of the car. They get banged. Check regularly to make sure that none of your shafts are bent. Obviously your helicopter will be vibrating, but still it's good to check those things. The next thing is thrust bearings. Most helicopters have thrust bearings in the blade grips and the tail rotor blade grips. It's very important to keep those well lubricated and also smooth. You'll notice over time that's actually a part where the radial bearings might not be worn out, but the thrust bearings could be. So that's something to regularly look at and change. This is an electric model, so the only thing that you really have to worry about in the motor with this is the bearings in the motor, and also to make sure that your batteries are still in balance and things like that. With a glow motor, you have other things like a rear bearing, front bearing, making sure that the piston and liner are all smooth. Most of the fuels these days, like Byron fuels, they have a pretty good they don't have an after run, but they have a very good oil in them that actually keeps the bearings lubricated. So sitting for a while isn't that big a deal. But if you do, the best thing is to drain all the fuel out of the motor and put maybe just a couple drops of automatic transmission fluid into the rear bearing, and then let that drain out. The biggest thing is, if you're using a YS engine, that's not a very good technique, because if the automatic transmission fluid gets into the carburetor, it won't work. So with those, you'll just have to use the YS after run fuel. But on OS and Thunder Tiger engines, a few drops of ATF could actually really help the longevity of your engine. A couple things just to point out, a few main key points that you really don't want to fall off of your helicopter while you're flying. Number one, on a flybar model, make sure that your paddles are secure. These are spinning at the same speed as the rotor blades, so if they fling off, it could be very dangerous. Same with the tail rotor. Some things going down the rotor head, make sure that all your linkages are tight. Having just a little bit of play up and down is normal. Having in and out play is what you want to look for. If a link is starting to move in and out, that's when it's time to change the link. Flybars, over time, they tend to bend to break. If you notice your flybar's bent, I would recommend that you replace it. Same with head axle, dampeners, all that kind of stuff. If you don't keep up on your dampeners, you could have a possible boom strike, or if the head axle can shift in the rotor head, you'll start to see a lot of vibration. One thing to check with that is, since dampeners are rubber, you can usually tell if there's little rubber shards or something like that starting to peel off, or you start to get some sort of dust. Going down the rotor head here, you want to make sure that your swash plate, everything, all the balls are, real tight. It is good to use red on a lot of the stuff that you know you're not going to be taking apart or adjusting a lot, like the control balls. Just use red Loctite on those. The next thing is servo arm screws. I don't know how many times, I think everybody that's been flying quite a while has always had a servo arm screw fall out. I would really recommend to either use star washers under the screw, or using red Loctite, a little bit of red Loctite for those kind of things. Gear mesh is a common question that a lot of people ask. There's the paper trick where you put a piece of paper between the gears. That's just kind of personal preference. Basically, you just want a little click. And the best way to do that on an electric is actually after you first fly it, set it a little bit loose, and then fly it. Get the pinion in the motor warm, but fly it carefully so that we don't strip your main gear. I mean, we're talking a little bit loose, not a lot loose. And then once the pinion is warm, set the gear mesh, because after it's warm, everything is expanded. As we go down the tail rotor, obviously boom supports are a big thing. If boom supports come off, there could be tons of vibration in the tail rotor. At times, even sometimes, if you fly it long enough like that, your tail rotor your tail boom will shear off at some certain point. Make sure your fin is tight. It is important to make sure that with fins to choose very stiff fins. Any of the fins, as they start to get old, specifically plastic or sometimes carbon, as they get fuel sucked, they get real flimsy. That could be a possible point that could cause vibration to get back to your gyro. So you want stiff and rigid fins. As you go back, make sure that your tail shaft is straight, tail hub straight, thrust bearings. Obviously, tail hub screws are a big thing. If those come out, that's not good. Tail blade screws, everything like that. Just to touch a little bit on this, a lot of people ask, how tight should I run my blades? And what I tend to do is only run them tight enough so if you take the helicopter and shake it, the blades don't fall. That's the same for the tail rotor and also the main rotor head. If you turn the helicopter sideways and just kind of give it a little shake, the helicopter should, the blade should stay straight out.